Hello and welcome back to your favorite podcast, The Seventh Rule, with your stars, Cirroc Lofton and Aron Eisenberg. Also with us is super producer Jarrod Cooper. My name is Ryan T. Husk. We're going to be discussing the finale of Discovery Season 2, and we're also going to be discussing Season 2 of Discovery as a whole. We're going to cover it all. We're going to talk about it all. Cirroc's going to be hilarious. Aron's going to try to be hilarious. Jarrod's not going to laugh at any of it. And we'll be right back with the seventh rule. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to a special edition of The Seventh Rule, where we're going to cover the finale of Season 2 of Discovery, as well as Season 2 of Discovery as a whole, maybe even Season 1 a little bit. Jarrod's going to school us. Your stars here are Aron Eisenberg and Cirroc Lofton of Deep Space Nine.
Jarrod, can you just yeah, there you go. Now we're in the center.
Hey, they made that joke in the Orville episode.
Yes! just the guy on the screen, right? He was off center. He's like, composition's off. Can you just... Yeah, thank you for calling out my reference. Well done. Well done. Bravo! Ryan,
right. I just thought you wanted to see Rebecca Romaine. I figured that was what it was.
Yes.
But you covered her up.
Idea.
But you covered her up. Why you covered her up? I'm just curious why you're off center. If you were talking to your right, that would work for me.
Very quickly.
There we go. Let's do one of these.
Well, I'll go off center.
For those of you that are watching right now,
closer, I want to whisper something in your ear.
So for those of you that are watching, those of you that are listening, you can't see, but in my background, I've got four of the people that have died. Pike and Cornwell, as well as number one, and Aron. I'm sorry, two of them have died. Two of them are just gone from the show. And that is thanks to Bob Mosley, who just put that together and posted that this morning. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's a great background. So shout out to Bob Mosley for that. And with that, what do you guys think of the finale of Season 2, by the way?
Aron, I think that's you.
Oh, why do I have to begin? I'll be honest. I loved it. I had a great ride. I thought it was a great ride. I thought it was a great finish to the season, and I thought it was a good loop from where we began to where we got to. I think I was talking to Ryan yesterday, and he was pointing out some things that would make good discussions for this episode that hopefully he'll bring up when it's his turn to call upon this episode. But I thought everybody knocked it out of the park on this one. You know, they all did a great job. All the actors did a fabulous job on the show. I know that some things don't quite make sense, and I don't know if we really had to go in that direction. And you know, with Cornwell's character dying, I think Jarrod made some points prior to our show today there was ways that probably didn't have to happen. So, and there's other things I think that maybe didn't have to happen as well. But overall, in watching the show, I really, really enjoyed it. So what
were you saying didn't have to happen specifically? I didn't understand.
Well, like I was talking to Ryan yesterday about let's say one thing I was always confused about is time travel always muddles my head, right? And in the scene with her and Spock, and that she now had to go back and basically put all the what were they called?
Signals.
What's that?
The signals?
Yeah, she had to go back in time to put all the signals in order to finally go forward. I was thinking to myself, was that like in the little instruction manual to her her new suit? You know, make sure you go back. And they figured that out so quickly in such a short amount of time. And I was like, was that really necessary, or could we have assumed that once they went somewhere into the future, that she went back and did that. And Ryan had a great explanation, because sometimes I'm not too intelligent enough, as Cirroc will attest to. Pointed out it was kind of like Bill and Ted's when he said, leave your keys right here. When he came back, there were his keys. It was that. So I'm like, oh, so that's what they were trying to do. But my question was, did it really need to be done? Did they have to waste that time in there to go through that whole montage?
Right.
I kind of felt like
it's an extra step.
Happening. What's that?
It's like an extra step that you didn't need in the process of telling the story.
Yeah, or did we? Maybe you guys will say, yeah, you feel we did. I think Melissa felt it worked really well for the episode. And we kind of debated about it while we were watching the episode. And I go, but I don't get it. I don't know why. It's already there. In the present where they're at, those signals have already been laid. But I guess there was one more. Am I missing it, Jarrod?
There was the one that she did the guide discovery at the end. And then there was a signal from the very, very end for Spock and Pike and them to show that they were okay.
So couldn't she have just laid those? No?
Well, it's almost like a predestination thing. They had already been laying, so you had to make sure that was all okay before you went forward. And from an audience standpoint, this entire season they've been asking, who's the Red Angel? What are these signals? They kind of needed to throw them a bone explaining what they were and where they came from.
Well, in that, I don't think they needed to make it Burnham to be the ultimate, see, I really did put the signals there. I don't think that was 100% necessary, to be honest. But despite my little questions in that, or Cornwell's character needing to die, did she really need to die? Was there, I still love the episode, and it was, to me, it really lifted TV, and it really set a high bar. I felt for the show. Got me excited about season 3, and almost wondering, do we really need a movie? If we can have such high quality television with special effects, wonderful acting, excellent directing, high production value, a fun, exciting story that can take me away from the holes in the story and not make me keep pointing them out, I'm all in for the ride, and I really look forward to season 3. And I'll end with this. Ryan, before you.
I just want to jump in on the point that you just made right there.
Sure.
That's something I hadn't thought of, is the fact that the production value of these episodes are such that they're basically shorter movies. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel the need for a movie at this point. Whereas, say, when Next Generation ended, you've got 42 minutes of, fairly low budget but good storytelling. And then when they announce, here comes a movie, it's like, oh, that's it. Here's the big time. Here's the big thing. But now with these kind of episodes where there are much fewer episodes, but each episode's like a mini movie, you're right. We're not sitting there clamoring for a movie because we're basically getting it. Anyway, please continue.
And my only real critique I had watching it, and no offense, I mean, I'm not out there directing TV and directing movies, so I don't feel like I could really call on this, but it did bother me. In the scene when all the chaos started to happen, I felt it was too set up for camera. This of telling, this group is working on this group is working on that group's working on this, and they just did this one walks, this one walked, this one walked, next we go here, this one walked. And it was too set up for me. It didn't feel as chaotic as it should be. Felt like it was trying to make it chaotic, yet it was too organized. I felt like while the camera's here, there's going to be 2 other people waiting for their cue. And then as soon as the camera, now they're walking. And remember, we got to set up da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then there's the 2 others over here, and they're done, and boom. Oh, and remember, next time we get over here, you got to make sure da-da-da. And that kind of bugged me because that did take me out of the show. It was too set up, too organized, in my opinion.
Interesting. A lot of people like that kind of choreographed style. It's good for action. It's visually stimulating. But you're right that mentally you're sitting there thinking wait, that's not really how people do things. That's, it feels a little forced, but it's just an exciting way of storytelling. What that is, it's done sometimes if they feel like maybe this particular scene or this line isn't quite interesting enough, so they need to spruce it up to keep it moving, to keep it exciting, right or wrong. I think that's why they do that.
But I would argue on this show, I felt in the directing, they did a lot of really interesting things throughout the series. They took a lot of risks. They got very creative. As a matter of fact, talking to Jonathan Frakes about it in Florida at a con, he said the difference between this one and, say, Orville, because he's directed both, is on Discovery, they say, go for it. Whatever you can think of, let's see if we can do that. Be as creative as possible. Really try to do different and new things, where Orville is really run by Seth. He has a very specific way of how he wants everything done. So there's less opportunity to really push the creative limit in what you can do and what you want to do. So in that argument, you're right, because in that organized setting, it's very Star Trek. If you look back through our show, other shows, they do that all the time. But in this one, I felt like they took me in so many different directions throughout the season, as well as the first season, and how they wanted to direct it, whether they're using light, whether they're using a slow-moving camera on two talking heads back and forth, or whether the camera's just flying through everything, or it's static. I felt this one, they said, let's try something new. Let's really push it here. And I felt they kind of got it, made it a little too simplistic, I guess you could say, within the chaos. But okay, anyway, that's a lot. I talked a lot. So I give the reins over to one of you three.
That's a lot of good stuff, especially what you said about Frakes and about the directing. Cirroc, what do you think? I mean, that's really cool that basically you're saying Orville, he's comparing that, the Orville is a little bit more controlled, a little bit more formulaic, whereas Discovery, they're saying, hey, it's experimental. Let's see what we can do. Let's wow them.
Which is interesting because that's the exact opposite of how it used to be. I remember us being the formatted show that had to really stay, structured and not deviate from the script. But I think it's interesting that they're trying out new things. I kind of want to touch on what Aron was saying about giving me so much and then having it kind of go away so fast. I feel like they cram so much information and things in this season, and that now I'm saying bye to Pike, who actually really have become really fond of. And now it's like, basically I feel like they're starting a whole new series now. Now's the first season of the real Discovery. And it's like almost this whole first beginning part was just to set up. It's a prequel to itself almost. Saying, okay, now we're going to be 1,000 years, 900 years into the future. And this is where the show's actually going to technically begin. And I feel like that's what I've been waiting for this whole time. A new start, a future show set into, something new. But it felt like they had to cover the old base in order to get to the new base, in order to win over the fans, to convince them that they were, authentic, to the canon and in the history of the show. So I think they checked all those boxes to win on the fans, to get the fans to say, oh yeah, well these people, they're really aware of all the different alien races and all of the different technologies and the storylines. So they're well-versed. They did this whole beginning to explain to the fans that they're qualified to have the education and the background to be the ones that are recipients of the steward of Star Trek, essentially. And now I believe they're going to begin the kind of show that I was looking for in the beginning, which is an original show set in its own timeline, doing its own thing.
At that point, I'll just say real quick that the showrunners did actually discuss that before even season 1 happened, where they said that this show will serve as kind of like a springboard for other shows. So you're right that they kind of established this, and then from here, they've opened the door for Section 31. They've opened the door whether they're going to do it or not, we don't know. And then to a Pike show. Now they've also opened the door to Discovery going and doing their own future things. So they're kind of like, it kind of was like a little springboard to where different shows can come. Anyway, sorry, what were you saying, Aron?
Oh, no. Good conversation. I was just going to comment on what Cirroc's saying, in the fact that a lot of people, were not happy that it was another prequel. that it was going before everything. But do you think if people didn't say that, if people were like, oh, this is fantastic, and there weren't any complaints about that they wouldn't have gone 1,000 years in the future? They would have just kept going with whatever, wherever they're at.
And I think
hold on. Or was the idea because people didn't like that and were frustrated that that's why they went to the future? Or did they try to do that, be like, look, we're so stuck with our creativity based on this constant canon we have to adhere to. How can we get ourselves away from that? How can we create a story that will get us into the future? So is this action a product of the 2 years, not an end game of where they thought they were going to go at the very beginning? I don't know.
Well, I want to add to that. The luxury that these producers have, that I don't think that no other producer of a Star Trek show series has had, is the ability to see the response of the fans at instant time, at real time.
Ooh, good call. Good call.
And so they're able to evaluate in real time how fans respond to what they're doing, what they're lacking, what they've overly emphasized. And so they can make adjustments, like a coach planning for another opposition, make adjustments to what they're going to do. Change the offensive playbook.
Right.
This is not working. This is working. This guy's hot. We're going to give him the ball. And so I think in real time, they have the ability to make the kind of changes that will suffice the fans to the greatest degree.
You're right. That's a huge asset that previous iterations didn't have, is that they can put a product out, test it out, more than just with numbers, but with actual real-time reviews. Now, real-time being from when it's put out, not from when it's written or shot. Think about it. I mean, Enterprise probably wouldn't have gotten canceled after 4 seasons if after the first season people were saying, hey, we want to see X, Y, and Z. They would have adjusted. And the producers are flat out saying, yes, we hear them. We're listening. We're reacting. That's how Dr. Culber came back. When he was originally killed, he came back not because it was always part of the plan, but because so many fans said, hey, you just created an awesome character. You're not Game of Thrones. Give us back our character that we like.
Right.
It's not cute. We like him. Keep it. They brought him back. And personally, I think that Stamets, Culber, and Reno consistently are getting the best scenes of most of the episodes I'm seeing. Last episode, this final episode, I thought the best scene was between Culber and Stamets. I thought the previous scene, when Stamets is dying there and Culber's in, it was beautiful, and that was beautifully shot. The scoring was great. The lighting was great. The acting was awesome. The writing, the script was great. It was perfect. Best scene, I thought. Before that, I thought the best scene was between Reno going to see Culber when she came in with the hangnail, supposedly. I said that was the most Star Trek scene. A few episodes ago, I thought the best scene was between Culber and Stamets in their room, in their quarters, when they're kind of having the fight and they're breaking up. And then with Culber and Ash, when they had their little battle scene, and Saru was like, fuck it, let them fight. I mean, they're consistently giving those guys, the best.
I don't know if they're necessarily given the best. I think that we believe their relationship, and they've sold the chemistry between the two. The softness of the conversations and the more heartfelt relationship conversations give us a little bit of what we want as a Star Trek fan, which is human emotions, connections, and interactions.
I'm saying that I think that they're the best written too. They're just, I feel like they're the best scenes, and we wouldn't have had those had they gotten rid of Culber and kept him gone. So it's kudos to them for listening and for adjusting well, not just doing fan service, but making it work. Anyway, you were going to say something, Aaron?
It could be a double-edged sword if they listen too much and keep trying to adjust to every every complaint or everything somebody says, you're just going to get a show that's just a mismatch on all over the place. In my opinion, I felt that's kind of what was happening. I wouldn't say in the first 2 episodes, but maybe somewhere between there towards the middle, there was this, what I felt was a lack of direction. It was almost like they set up a journey, and then they went here to here, and they added all these other little things that never really played out or had a direct impact.
Right.
Weren't really connected. And then they kind of just let it go, and then they found what I felt was their run.
So are they suggesting that Spock doesn't talk about his sister because it's classified? Is that what the whole...
Say that again?
Yeah.
Are they suggesting that Spock doesn't talk about his sister because it's classified?
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I always said I just figured it's because she was dead. That's what I took away from it. Not you can't talk about her ever again. You can't talk about her being alive ever again.
I'll be honest. One of the best things I loved about this season, and that goes to what you're bringing up right now. And while it's a little far-fetched, and Ryan pointed this out to me the other day, and I agree with him, I still love that the writers they did a very good job here and there of dropping little things to answer to all the questions of how can this show be like this, all the way back to TOS is like this. They did it with lots of either 1 or 2 liners. They did it with when Pike comes back onto the Enterprise in his TOS looking outfit. They didn't go right back to the TOS outfit. They alluded to it. They alluded to a bridge that looked like it, but looked like it was comparable Discovery. And I'm like, all right, I buy that. I'm good. It's no longer a hoopty. The Enterprise isn't a hoopty considered next to the Discovery. And at the same time, they had 2 female helmsmen, right? Helmswomen at the top, just like in the, I think it was the first Pike episode, right? The pilot, if I'm correct. Jarrod, am I correct about that?
Yeah.
Weren't there 2 female? Although, if you go back to that episode, he was a bit sexist.
Well, one of them's the same. One of them was number 1, so it's literally the same person.
Yeah, but the lines in the original pilot where he was kind of a jerk, they didn't go there, which I thought was good. But I thought that was great. They did little touches to do that. So in the regards to Spock, how are they going to get him on back on Enterprise? And they did that and I thought that was great. And then there was the saying goodbye to his sister. And while it is a bit far-fetched to have them say, we won't talk about this, it's like Fight Club, or something. It's like, come on, it's going to get out. But it answers why we never heard of that through all the other shows. And I'm like, fair enough. They're doing the best they can to connect everything to the past into the present and now move into the future. And I give them a lot of credit for that. I thought not only did they do that, but they also made that somewhat the theme of the season. And
which was my beef, though, by the way. So I know you love it, but everything that you love is my beef with the show, technically, because you're piggybacking off of Pike, you're piggybacking off of Spock, you're piggybacking off of these characters that have already been established and known,
sure,
so that you can make new characters and kind of, it's like,
well, Pike was never drawn out though, and they did that this year. So I don't think piggyback is the right word. And they were given this, right? Because that's how it was set up in season 1. This is where we're starting.
You're validating something new with something that's already been validated, and that's the same thing. For example, what's been done for years in the music business. A guy who's validated, a guy like Dr. Dre, who has credentials, can now say, this new guy, whether it's Eminem or 50 Cent, is got my stamp on it. And once I validate it, now he has now been initiated because of my validation. The same thing is being done relatively the same thing is being done in this case. You're taking people that you know, characters that you're already familiar with, and even though you're telling stories you haven't told, you're still using that as a validation, as a credit, to get the street credibility to now legitimize the new thing that you're introducing. It's not a problem. It's just a process. It's just a process by which that they think it's necessary to reintroduce the brand. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that's what I think it is.
What other Star Trek talk show can you hear a shout out to Dr. Dre? Well deserved. Only this one. Now, we're going to take a quick commercial. Come on, he's one of the coolest guys ever, man. I'm glad we found a way to incorporate him.
Michael Chiklis is cool, too.
I knew you were going to do that. You knew it. Anyway, we're going to come right back. We're going to talk about what our fans and friends thought of Season 2 and the final episode of Season 2 when we come right back with the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule, the podcast that covers Star Trek, Star Trek Discovery, Dr. Dre, Michael Chiklis, and cool videos.
Look, egg.
Oh, look at that.
Look on your face.
I got a smile from Jarrod and a shaking of the head.
That's inner laughing with Jarrod.
Hey, touchdown.
That's a success.
So during the commercial, Aaron brought up a good question, so let's just jump right into it.
Well, Aaron, earlier you said that the writers inherited this, and they're doing a good job. You said they're doing a good job with what they inherited, and what I was
not quite inherit. Wait, not quite inherit.
You said they.
No, if okay, what I was trying to say was, if you have a show, who made the decision to start where it is, and then writers get hired to be on that show, like. If they had X amount of writers,
it's been changed by them. The guys that were hired changed it however they want to change it. So to say that they inherited, maybe they inherited the characters themselves, the names of the characters, and what races the characters are, but the situations that they went through, they didn't inherit that. They actually.
No, you're right. But I think that they
chose to go that way,
or were given the basic premise of the show and where and when it takes place. So they have to then make the decisions on what stories they tell based upon where they were told the show takes place. They can't say, oh, okay, it takes place before TOS, so in the second episode we're going to go to the future.
I got what you're saying there, and what I thought was interesting that Jarrod was pointing out, and the two of you guys were pointing out, was the difference between the anthology and the prequel, and how it made a switch or a change, crossover from an initial ideal of being an anthology to now being this kind of prequel. So that
who made that decision?
The people who didn't inherit that decision, they made that decision. That's what I'm saying.
But I would. Jarrod, do you know who made those decisions?
Well, Brian Fuller was the one that wanted the anthology.
As a producer, right?
As a producer, he wanted it, and he had conflicts, and he left.
Right.
Which would have brought in Alex, one of those 50 producers that gets credited every week. I think this past week had 22 producers of some sort. So we had Alex Kurtzman, Aaron, and Gretchen. And I think the real question is, who was telling them no? If they wanted...
No, let's ask another question also. What's the reason Brian Fuller left?
Well, I heard it was because Jake and Nog weren't on the show. And he wanted, basically,
I heard the same thing, so...
Yeah, exactly.
The voice of the people. He said, look, I serve the people. If Jake and Nog aren't here, then we're walking.
Yeah, so is that the discussion that really was that the straw, or was it something else?
I don't.
Let's just say hypothetically that it were something else. What would that be?
I mean, that's hard to think hypothetically that far.
I'm with you on that. We agree.
We're sci-fi people. We can stretch it.
Okay, but as a far stretch, what would you think that he would not be wanting to do the new Star Trek, as a fan of Star Trek, as a guy who's written on shows before?
I think he wanted to do something different. And I think the powers that be said, no, we want something similar to what we want. Yeah, something similar to what we've had. We want closer to TNG, TOS. I don't even think they probably wanted something like DS9, to be honest. And I don't know how we got into as I joke around every show, a SHIELD beginning with Michael Burnham being a mutineer. You know, I thought that was pretty bold for Star Trek, to be honest. So I'm thinking to myself,
that's what brings me to the idea that the original concept, just like you articulated, was based on a more Deep Space Nine type of concept, which was to be bold and to really challenge the limits.
Yeah.
As opposed to telling the story of how Pike ended up in a wheelchair, essentially,
well, this is also the second
a way to bring Spock on to, Discovery.
You know what we need to do is we really need to get Bowie Yun, can't say her middle name, Kim and Erica on our show to talk to them about the first 2 seasons and how they got from the beginning to here and what was their direction. So you could take a light and shine it in their faces and say, why did you do this? Why? And I can say, easy, I'll be the good cop. You can be the bad cop.
I'll be the bad cop. Okay.
Well, all joking aside, I would love to have them come in and talk to us about it if they're willing, because I would love to hear what was their beginning ideas, right? And how did they get to here? I think that they were hired and said, here's where we're at, and you take us on the adventure. And that's why I'm a little bit more, I would say, easy on them, I think, than you are. Because that's why I think they were inherited this. Oh. What's that, Jarrod?
Okay, I'm gonna put weird left field pieces together.
Okay.
I think that the toss-up came when the decision came around for there to be a season 2. And season 2 would be the same as season 1. Reason I'm saying this, the very first Discovery book that was out there, the very first tie-in novel that was published in conjunction with the production team, Kirsten Beyer was involved, included Captain Pike and Spock and Burnham, and did that entire relationship. It went to press, it's out there, it got released. Less than a year later, the production team changes, that book gets blown out of the water. I hate to say it, it's good stuff, but it doesn't really matter anymore because Pike is in season 2. I wonder if a lot of the changes came when season 2 was going to be a continuation of season 1 rather than something completely different.
What do you think, Ryan?
I don't know too much about that in particular. I do know that theoretically they did, since they did plan on having it as an anthology series, that really was going to be a standalone season and then possibly another standalone season. Right now, it looks like they're doing it's an amalgamation of the two, which is they're kind of tied together, but each season has its own true story arc, and they're really almost standalone seasons, but with certain tie-ins of characters and storylines. So, it seems like that's what it is. I don't know what the crux of it was. There were a couple delays, if you'll recall, when they first started out. They delayed it a few months, and they delayed it again a few months when they're ironing it out. And it does seem like they were given a pretty difficult task, which is, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this. Okay, go, now write it. You know what I mean? And so it's really hard to write within those constraints. And oh, by the way, it also has to match canon, which, believe me, we all know that if it doesn't match canon, the fans will let you know.
Yeah. They'll let you know right away.
But I thought, again, I'll say it again, I loved how they connected dots throughout this season. Little things, and I wish I could remember all of them. There was one where Pike walked out into the hallway and said something to one of the others. I was like, oh, that was sweet. It was just in a conversation, but it answered one of the what ifs. Wait, if we were there longer. Do you remember what it was, Ryan?
There are many of them, but it might have been that one.
I wish I could remember which one that was.
It might have been when she said, oh, and don't worry, there won't be any more holograms ever again.
Yeah.
So mad.
Yeah, that's right. I don't use holograms on my ship. That's what it was.
More holograms.
Yeah.
And number one, or Una, because that's her name. Number one even said it. We had all those holograms ripped out.
Yeah, but then she also says there will be no more holograms ever again. Like, okay, we get it. You don't have to really cram it in our throats. We get it. You're letting us know.
Melissa has a comment on what we were just talking about. She said even Rod Roddenberry didn't have as much say in the direction the show went in the beginning. You know, so somebody. That's what I throw at you, Cirroc. Somebody said this is where we're at. Hired writers said, now you guys need to do your job and write. And I think they did a fantastic job. And they fleshed out a character that we didn't know a lot about and made him a full breathing character with life that we actually cared about, to the point where people love him so much, not only because he's a wonderful actor. I think they're also infatuated with him because he's a good-looking guy. But everybody wants a fight. Yeah, everybody wants a fight show, you know?
He was a great captain. He probably might get a role on a spinoff. I don't know how much they can stretch out his story before he ends up in a wheelchair, but you know.
Well, 5 years, Jarrod? Is it in 5 from here?
4-ish, 5-ish.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny. You guys were talking about listening to the fans and getting that instant feedback. If you want to know what the fans need, the last people you need to ask are the fans.
Yep.
Because they're a bunch of hypocrites. These same people that were screaming. Seriously, think about it. The same people that were screaming because this was a prequel series are asking for a Pike series, which is another prequel series.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like they don't know what they want, so they're the last people you need to be listening to.
Well, but then again, that doesn't really make them hypocrites, because if they don't want a prequel series, but then all of a sudden there's something about it, they go, wow, this was great, I didn't think about it, and then they change their tune. You know, and I don't blame them for wanting a prequel, because they keep wanting to go back to the beginning. And like, we've never seen anything after DS9, you know, or Voyager, right? Nothing's come after that. So I get why people want to keep moving forward, but it also is kind of nice when you go back and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. And then you get pulled into that. Books do it all the time too. Reading like Terry Brooks, The Sword of Shannara. You know, that series also takes tangents and goes back and all these things. Look at the similar. Oh, I can't even say that word.
Cimarillon.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, he died, and you know, people and like hearing how things got to a certain point is also interesting. I think just Star Trek tried to do it too much, didn't succeed at times either. But anyway, here's where we are. Maybe we should hear what some of the other, unless you had a comment on that, Ryan, on what some of these other people have said too, of our patrons and stuff.
Yeah, just real quick. When you're talking about, you know, how the relationship between the producers and the fans, and how they think they know what they want, but they don't really. It is similar, you know, forgive me, but it is slightly akin to parents and children. Like, if you ask the child, what do you want? What's best for you? The kid's going to say, I want candy and Coke all day, every day. And the parent's like, well, you think that's good for you, and you think you want that, but trust me, you don't. I want candy and Coke. You know, and then if the parent gives them other good things, you know, hey, let's go check out France. Kid says, I don't want to go see France. That sounds dumb. Then the kid sees France and they go, all right, maybe you were right. That was pretty cool. You know, so I mean, it's kind of oversimplified.
More croissants.
Like that, yeah. But you want to read something that our fans and friends have said in the past. We'll let Jarrod read it.
Awesome. So Lauren Gonzalez said, loved it. I'm excited for season 3 and wondering what we will see. It would be awesome to see what 950 years in the future will look like, but I'm also wondering what will become of some of our characters if that is the case. I know Pike and number 1 are done after this season, but what about Ash and L'Rell, Spock? Will we never see them again now that we're in the future? Will the show go back and forth between timelines? Well, Ash and L'Rell are done. L'Rell was already recurring this season.
Oh, you think so?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we're going to see Ash in the Section 31 thing. So we know he's coming back.
Are we?
Yeah. So if Ash is
he's in charge of it.
Section 31 thing.
Yeah.
But has he been cast in it?
He has to be. He rolled off his. I thought he's going to be 31.
He's in charge of it then, but
Oh, that's true.
Georgiou was on Discovery. She's in the future with him. There's no guarantee that the Section 31 show is going to be set back then.
But Georgiou's going to steal the suit and go back in time and hang out with Ash and run Section 31.
From a production standpoint, my only question is I wonder how many of those suits they had. Like, did they cast Michael's mom based off of someone that could fit the suit?
It's the time crystals that are hard to find on the black market.
There's plenty of them 950 years early. They're like flying all over the place. And if George Carlin was alive, we would have seen him, help them get to the future. That would have been beautiful.
You know what I didn't like? I didn't like these little robots that were fixing the hull.
Very Star Wars, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You said Star Wars? I thought
it was
Wall-E.
corny in general.
You thought what, Jared?
I thought Wall-E, like the Disney movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I disagree with you, though, Cirroc. I immediately saw Star Wars, but then I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Things we don't see that probably need to happen in some capacity that we never saw in any of the other shows. I thought it was kind of interesting, and I thought it was it's kind of like when they went through, I guess you can't call them elevators, of course, right? But when they go through the inner workings of the ship, they did it again, I think, on this episode, if I'm correct. It was either this one or the last one. I thought that was really neat because it's showing us something that either A, we either always wondered about, or B, didn't, and go, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't think about that. There's got to be ways to repair the ship on the outside rather than, what we would have to do today, which is to jump in a suit and go out there and go start working. And I don't mind if they answer that, even though it reminded me of Star Wars,
Let's jump into what
I didn't sell him on that, ladies and
No,
gentlemen.
I don't like
If you're just listening, his face.
I hear you, but I didn't like it.
Tell us why, Cirroc, before we jump into the secret chicken sauce.
To me, it's corny, and it could have been it could be anywhere then. Why isn't it why don't they have one in the elevator asking you what floor you want to go to, or at the Replimat taking your order? If you're gonna have them, then just put them everywhere. There'll be security. They'll be in the security ops. They'll be doing.
I think Control wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Control wanted. They stopped that from happening.
Yeah, I didn't
so
like it.
easy to replicate. I mean, if the technology is that sophisticated and that finite and that advanced, it seems strange that current technology could replicate it so easily. And if they could replicate it so easily, why didn't they replicate 30 of them? Now, I don't know if these questions were answered in the episodes. If so, I missed it. But there are a lot of things where you could say, look, you're either going to choose to watch this and enjoy it, or you're going to choose to nitpick it to death. And either way,
that's true.
Either way, you have tons of ammo to do so. You have tons of ammo to nitpick it to death. There's tons of shit there, that has holes in it, and there's tons of good stuff you can enjoy about it. So it's kind of
I was just throwing it out there. It's not like a big deal.
What doesn't have a hole in it? That door, that blast door, doesn't have a hole in it. whatever it's made out of, whatever that glass is made out of, it doesn't have a hole.
Yeah, that was one thing I was saying I think it was during the break, which is why was Cornwell why was Cornwell willing to die when all she had to do was pull the lever and do a Geordie LaForge barrel roll under the door, because the door closed so slowly, but instead she's like, nah, I'm ready to just
okay, couldn't you argue that the physics of, first of all, it's broken the hole, so the first thing that's going to open in the explosion is going to go into space, and that's just going to suck everything out. It's not going to go inwards, it's going to go outwards, which could explain why the door didn't break in and it didn't go inward, because everything was taken outward. No? Could you not at least suspend your belief that might possibly happen? I'm not an engineer. I just played one on TV. But thank you. And I don't have a script to tell me how that would work.
And the secret chicken, by the way, says, I loved it. I can't wait to see how things pan out in season 3 and beyond. I was comparing it to the finale of Walking Dead and realizing how different it felt. Huh, weird.
I didn't see this finale, and he goes on, as you're going to read.
Walking Dead, I was just kind of relieved that they killed. Ooh, yeah, spoilers. Let's skip that.
Good job, Ryan.
Here I felt like they gave all the best characters a chance to do even greater things. Good that Ash didn't go with them. I can only deal with one fraught love story, and I'm glad it was the snarky, realistic couple instead of the trauma-bonded one. And Tig Notaro. Damn, I love her. The only thing I would have a complaint about would be too much of the meaningful dialogue speech-making when they're supposed to be on a tight schedule.
Yes, I agree.
There's no time for that. Okay.
It's true. It's this chaos, and all of a sudden, I'm going to miss you.
Could you imagine
about 10
had
minutes.
this been one episode like it was originally supposed to be rather than 2?
There were so many goodbyes. There were like 15 goodbye scenes in the second to last episode, and there were like another at least. I felt like they kept coming back to spots.
Yeah, they overkilled the goodbyes.
I don't need to see this, guys. I don't need to see it.
They overkill on the goodbyes. And also, Jarrod, going back to your point about that unbreakable door, to kind of make a parallel in real life, every time there's a plane crash, they say, well, we have to find the black box. And I'm like, well, why don't they make a plane out of the black box? You know, if that's indestructible. But that's a whole nother story. Did that just blow your mind or what?
Well, you know what? I'm going to Google that because I bet you there is an answer for that.
So
why do they not make planes out
of black box material?
I wouldn't have as big a problem with the door had they not panned out and shown a picture of this big chunk of the ship that was missing. And it's like, okay, this thing blew up 5 feet away from this door, took out a quarter of the hull, but left this door unscathed.
Yeah, and what's holding the door? Clearly this door material expands out all the way through the ship, because if it didn't, then all that would be left would be a floating door. There'd be a floating door and a massacred ship.
I just put two fandoms together. Cornwell had Discovery's hold the door moment. That was her job.
And speaking of which, Vikram Bhatt says, I really enjoyed the entire season. The story was told really well, and the execution was also amazing. Anson Mount really killed it as Pike, and we definitely should demand to get a show about Pike's journey. About the finale itself, I found it maybe 7 out of 10, since there was not much revealed in terms of storyline, since most of it was done during the season. So in that sense, the finale was okay, but the execution of the fight scenes in CGI was amazingly done, almost like a movie. I really felt the emotions during most of the scenes. The final scene of Discovery leaving the present time was amazing. The writers did well to wrap everything up at the end, but it still hasn't sunk in that there will be no Star Trek on TV till the end of the year. That's a sad face emoji. We're really looking forward to what we left behind. That's you guys. The trailer looks fantastic and cannot wait for May 13th. Why don't you guys jump in on that for a second?
Yeah, we should get together, Seventh Rule thing for that. Even if we go to the theater and, you know, do some fun interviews with people. Maybe either before or after the episode would be kind of fun.
What are we talking about?
Our
documentary
that's coming out on May 13th. It's in theaters for one night. And I think you and I get free popcorn at any theater we go to. I think we get that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Before we do that, here's your black box answer. Unlike the rest of the aircraft, which is mostly made of light materials such as aluminum and plastic, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder are encased in stainless steel boxes roughly 10 inches by 10 inches by 5. The steel is maybe a 1/4 inch thick, and the boxes are so heavy in consequence that the designers don't even bother enclosing the accompanying electronics, which in a crash generally meet the same fate of the passengers. It's a little eerie. As an added precaution, the boxes are lined with a liquid-filled foam bladder encased in plastic that's supposed to protect against the intense heat of a post-crash fire. So, obviously, they couldn't make the entire plane of the same material and in the same fashion because it wouldn't get off the ground. I think you can make the same argument for this scene in Discovery. Just saying, maybe there is the same type of situation in how these ships are constructed and engineered, and in safety things, as things come in, I would assume more things centrally get protected so the ship can survive the damage inflicted from outside forces. Yeah, hence, the explosion would go out and not keep going in.
Yeah, maybe it's where it's like this, and if you're like in this section, you can close off this section, let all that out. Right. In this section, let's give them the benefit of the doubt there. Kind of like what Seth Rogen said, the whole multi-season story arc is compelling. It means every episode is a cliffhanger. Done right, it can inspire fans to watch every episode because we want to know what happens next. It's like any great seasonal entertainment. A show on play is playing for next Thursday. Probably a show or play. Meaning the show wants you to come back next week and bring your friends. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's trying to get you hooked and to bring all your buddies in to watch too.
Yeah. All two.
What we did with Cirroc.
Exactly. And now he's a Discovery fan. He can't wait for season 3.
I'm going to rewatch all the other episodes in the meantime.
And now you have like a year to watch The Shield and to see how, the beginning was the beginning of Discovery.
So I can understand all the references. Yes. Both episodes?
Just the first episode of The Shield is all you really have to watch, unless you end up enjoying it and watching it all the way through, as much as I did. But I would assume, Cirroc, going into season 3, you'd be much more excited because now all your complaints are put to rest. Because now we are in the future. Now we are. Jarrod? How many years are we after DS9 Voyager, where they're going?
800 some odd, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that pretty much kills the idea of having you and I guest star on the show, Aaron.
Well, I was just going to answer that. Being a Ferengi, I can easily get my hands on some time crystals and we can go forward. Because I actually have the info about Discovery from the past because I got my connections now, it's part of Section 31. So, yeah, Nog and Jake, I can't say we are coming. That
who could cameo on it?
Yoda.
Bob Picardo, because the holographic doctor survived that long.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they can really bring anybody if they really wanted to, especially that they've got this jumpsuit that can go anywhere they want it to go. And I did have one more, we only have probably a minute. I did have one more critique about it. I felt, remember in The Matrix when they needed to do something, they got it implanted in and then they could easily do it. What would you call it, Jarrod, what her screen was as she was trying to get the jumpsuit to take her into the future, right? And to go in the past. Mm-hmm. She's all, bum, 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 bum. I'm like, man, it took me a year to move that fast playing WoW, World of Warcraft. Right. Okay? How did she get to go, bum, bum, bum. Hey, Spot, this isn't working. I'm like, you were just taking lessons from your mom like 30 minutes ago going, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm like, that's no way you'd be a black belt in time travel. That fast. So that's a little, I felt they could have simplified that maybe so we would buy it. I felt it was a little too complicated for Burnham to be like, and then her and the ship all get pulled in and everything works. I mean, that worked much better than my cable does. So, that was one other critique I had. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
I'll love it. We're out of time. We got to run. Thank you so much for joining us on The Seventh Rule. Aron Eisenberg, Cirroc Lofton, Jarrod Cooper, Ryan T. Husk. Thank you all so much. We'll see you again real soon. Watch some Star Trek.